One of the best stories of nationwide disruption is the Paris strike of 1968, May of 1968. So if you ever want to hear a story about how an entire city came together for the rights of the people, this is a story for you. Let me tell you a little bit about it. A couple of things were at play at the time. There were stagnant wages. The cost of living was becoming a little bit unbearable, inflation increasing. The working class was really struggling to make ends meet. On top of everything else, there were a series of just poor working conditions, long hours, harsh environments, no safety protections whatsoever. And on top of all that, there was just this threat of modernization, automation, especially in manufacturing, as we've always seen, that technology would start to take some of these jobs away. And so there was this underbelly of discontent that just existed in the city and in the entire country for quite some time. What we also saw was that there was a political environment that allowed for there to be a feeling of a lack of representation. Charles de Gaulle and the government style at the time was very authoritarian, and so that leadership style led to inflexible government, where you didn't really feel as if you had the ability to speak up or get the representation that you needed. Labor unions in this case were too close to government and therefore didn't feel like they were representing the actual people as much as they were representing the ideals of government. And so that just led to this disconnect between the rulers of society, the leadership class, and what we would say are the people, the consumers, the workers, the folks that are really going through this every day. One group in particular that led the charge was the student population. They saw something very unsettling in their environment. They saw one overcrowded and underfunded schools, outdated curricula just impacted their ability to learn. Without this representation of this younger voice in government, they didn't feel like they had representation and government wasn't working for them. There would have been influence by America, which had an anti-war sentiment at the time, and that led to a lot of revolutionary theories gaining steam and creating this awakening of an ideology of just disruption as a way to move forward and get ahead for the betterment of people. And so what started was a spark that led to something that became really significant. In March, students began protesting basic things, administrative policies, demanding reforms, and this went on for several months. By May, there started to be a little bit more of a conflict between the students and police, and so those tensions began to rise. Where in May 6th through the 10th, you just had a lot of chaos with students and police going back and forth throughout Paris, and this was creating some violence in the streets. However, it was on May 13th that this all started to shift, where workers joined this movement. So now it wasn't only the young, the students, doing student protestings about their curricula, but now the workers started to join. And that's where things become interesting. Because when the workers started to come in, they really employed all of their resources to put a complete halt to everything. For example, workers seized controls of the factories and that entire infrastructure shut down. Transportation and public services were halted as those workers shut everything down. We saw worker assemblies getting together, started to demand more representation. We also saw blue and white collar workers coming together, starting to look for and ask for similar things from their employers. But what was probably the most important is that it went beyond just economics. Women seized upon this opportunity to start to talk about gender equality, and that movement started to move forward. There also was an anti-capitalist sentiment, viewing capitalism as maybe one of the things causing a lot of these social inequities. And so that sentiment started to gain some steam. And then because of that lack of representation, we saw a lot more democratic participation among a lot of the youth, which continued to this day. And so this was a significant moment. May 1968, the largest general strike in French history, where 10 million plus people went on strike at the same time. As a result of that, it led to wage increases in the neighborhood of 35%. And it's led to 54 years of influence that's driven primarily by activism and advocacy. As a result of this lasting disruptive moment in French politics and activism that led to change for the betterment of the people. And considering the parallels that we see today, it's just a really good example of some of the things that we can do to continue to move forward and try to understand the best ways that we can always make sure that we are looking out for the best interests of our neighbors and our communities.